Welcome back to the TALkS podcast. Today I am joined by Gene Mosley. He is a keynote speaker, author, certified behavior specialist, and not to mention, he is a near and dear friend of mine who I've known for a very long time. I thought I'd bring him on and share a lot of inspiration and motivation with you guys because honestly, every time I get on social media, especially Instagram, and I see this man's clips, he definitely knows how to fire you up and get you on the right path to success. So, Gene, welcome to the podcast and thank you for joining me.
Well, appreciate you for having me. It's an honor. Looking forward to it.
So go ahead and tell the audience, if they are not familiar with what you do or your work, tell them a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so what I do is, first of all, I'm the CEO of Ingenious Motivation. It's a communication company. I help a lot of now college students develop leadership skills, communication skills, as well as self-discipline skills. And my mission in life is to help people develop a word to be great mindset. And what I mean by that is a mindset that believes that you're worthy of the great vision that's inside of you, whether that vision was put into you by God, which I believe, or the universe or whatever. Because many of us, we have these great visions, but we don't go after it because we don't feel we're good enough. And when you don't feel that you're good enough to do something in life, you're never going to take those actions necessary to make that great vision inside of you become a reality. So my mission on this earth is to help as many people as possible to believe that they're worthy to be great.
And where did this really start for you? Like, when did the journey to become a keynote speaker and then write so many books and do all this for other people? When did this start? And kind of give us the background of what fired you up to do all this.
So where it came from is, tell you a little story. When I was 11 years old, I had just got home from elementary school with my little sister, and we walked into the house, and our mom was crying. So I was like, what's wrong, mama? She said, Junior, go in the room and ask your dad if he's going to leave us. Now, in my young mind, I'm thinking, oh, she mean that he's going to take another trip because he works on the railroad, right? So I walk into the room and I say, Daddy, Mama said you're going to leave. Is that true? He said, oh, no, son, I'm not going to leave. I'm putting in a better home outside this bad neighborhood. So when I went back and asked Mom, I said to my mom, I said, Mama, Daddy said he's not going to leave. Now, when she turned around and walked off and didn't say a word, I should have known at that moment that something was up. But in my young mind, I was like, everything is good. Well, the next 2 weeks, I didn't see my dad around the house. So I went to my mom. I said, Mama, where in the world is my daddy? And she said, Junior, your daddy's gone. He left us 2 weeks ago. Now, I didn't believe this, so I went to the one place that would solidify my belief. I ran to my parents' room. I opened up my daddy's closet door, and it was totally empty. And see, at that moment, I felt I wasn't good enough. I wasn't worthy. My life had no value because my daddy left after 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, after he promised me as his son, he would never leave. So that moment right there is what I call the empty closet. That is a moment we all have in our lives where we feel we weren't good enough. And part of my mission in life is to help people to face those moments in their lives, to acknowledge the fact you may have a traumatic experience that led to you feeling you're not good enough. And that's where it began to me. See, my greatest pain in life has become my purpose. And because I was able to go through 12 years of depression, suicidal thoughts, believing I wasn't good enough. But despite that, I still went on to become the first in our family to graduate from college. But the greatest thing I ever did in my life was to call my daddy my second year in college and forgive him for leaving the family. So that right there allowed me to acknowledge the empty closet in my life and also to deal with it. And that is where my message has blossomed from, of your word to be great. Because before that moment, I didn't believe I was worthy to be great at achieving anything. But that great moment of forgiving my daddy, which is something I never thought I'd be able to do, that let me realize at that moment that, you know what, I could do something great in this world.
Does that like relate to a lot of younger people? Like your message, not everybody can't relate to their parents or their dad leaving them, obviously, but traumatic experiences, obviously, I think almost everybody on the earth can relate to. Do you feel like you see a lot of similarities for what a lot of younger people, especially in college, are dealing with today?
Oh yeah, it's very huge. It's not just that. When I first started, I went into juvenile detention centers. That's where I first started going in and speaking and launching my speaking career. And see that story about my daddy leaving, I'd never told that story before because I was ashamed of it. And then when I first told that story in there, and I realized that it connected with a lot of the youth in there, and it was like, wow, this is my entry cause. My daddy left. Wow, this is my entry cause. This happened. For example, I met a young lady one time in the juvenile detention centers, and I didn't know this, but I was speaking, and afterwards they would come up and talk to me. Well, what I found out was, and she said, you know, my empty closet moment is that I had a very traumatic experience with a pimp. I was like, what are you talking about? She said, well, he was having me go out and sleep with all these different men, and the way he paid me is he took me to McDonald's and he fed me chicken nuggets. And so now my life has been molded to believe that I'm no more worthy than a chicken nugget. You know what I'm saying? So even though somebody may not have the same experiences as me, they have something else. And I give you another example. I did a keynote speech for an organization, and it was very, very wealthy people in the room. And one thing that I was doing is getting sponsorships for my book at the time because I was putting them in the juvenile detention centers all in Dallas, Texas. So I was trying to donate over 1,000 books, and I was able to accomplish that because of certain individuals like I'm about to tell you about. So when I was there speaking, there was this man in there. He's probably in his mid 50s, and he said, hey man, I could write you a check in here, but I would like for you to come to my business, and I would like to discuss something with you. Now, in those situations, you never know what it's going to be. So I was like, all right, I'll go down there. And then when I went there, he walks me into this. I'm not going to say the franchise because if you ever see this, you're going to be mad. I told the story. But he walks me through this franchise. This guy is extremely wealthy. And when I go in there, there's this big picture of this old dude that's on the wall, and there's all these employees. And he said, hey, come over with me. We're going to go to my office. And when I get in there, we sit down and we start talking. He started writing out the check. He said, I listened to you tell your story about, not feeling good enough. He said, my daddy's never left us. That's never happened. But everything you see right here, all the wealth that I have, all these franchise, they were given to me for my daddy. But here's the thing. I don't feel worthy of this. I said, why? He gave it to you. He said, well, right before my daddy died from cancer, he told me I was the biggest mistake he ever made, and I was a straight up loser. And if he could leave this company to anybody else, it would not be me. But he stuck with me. And that had happened about 15 years ago. And this man had all this success, but the one thing he was struggling with is he didn't feel he was good enough for the success. He didn't feel like he was good enough as a person. And what I've discovered is that it doesn't matter what my story is, but the one thing that always connects with people is that feeling of not being good enough and worthy. So that's what my mission is try to help people overcome that so they believe they're worthy to be great.
Wow. I don't know if my audience can tell by the way you're talking to me already, but this man was one of the people in my corner when I first started speaking professionally and getting in front of people. And honestly, I never told you this, Gene, but I was going through very, very extreme, severe effects of my brain injury from years prior, which I've shared with you before. And yeah, it just definitely helped me get on the right path and feel worthy enough to help people in those moments like what you're just describing. And yeah, it's so we actually met. I was gonna bring up this story because I think it's important for people to know. You never know who you're talking with. You never know who you connect with. I got invited back in I think 2015 or 16 to a National Speakers Association conference by Lauren Midgley. Shout out to her. And lo and behold, this guy was in the audience and didn't know anybody. He just I think you connected with me first, and then the relationship took on from there, and obviously we continue to encourage and help each other out. But it was that moment where it was like, okay, this is cool. I want to be around other like-minded people. I want to continue to become developed and well polished as a speaker, and obviously a greater communicator, because obviously you can have the greatest message in the world, but if you don't know how to deliver it and have the stage presence to where people can really feel the emotion, feel the motivation and the drive that you have, and obviously the passion to help people, it's not going to have as great of effects. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because as you were describing that, it definitely impacted me to feel worthy and to be able to do the things I do today. So I just want to give a huge shout out to you as you were describing that. That made me think of that. So
Well, appreciate that, man, and same with you. And yeah, I remember that day. It was Lauren Midgley who actually, Lauren was one of my mentors and coaches, and she actually brought you to me. She introduced me because she told me earlier, I'm going to bring this guy because I was the youngest person in the National Speaker Association. And then when you came, you was younger than me. So it was like, okay, cool. It's another young person. And I remember we had a conversation and you sent me the video of the accident. And I was like, wow, this dude is actually a walking miracle. Because I was like, how in the world did he survive that and can be coherent and still be able to speak on stage? Because I think at that time, you had already did a TED Talk or you was about to do another one. Because I went and saw you do one. I think it was in South Lake Carroll. Am I correct?
right, yeah.
Yeah,
That
I
was the
went and
first
saw
one.
you then. Yeah, and I remember that. But we've always kept up over the years, you know. I watched you grow, you know. I know sometimes I say things that can be tough, but it could be at the same time. I also knew as you becoming an adult, you becoming a man, you know, eventually you're going to have to step out and be more independent as an individual. And you're doing that now. You have your own TED Talk. You always got your own place. You're doing your own thing. So just to see you grow as an individual has been a great thing to see, and I could love to continue to do this. I love to continue to see you grow more in life.
I appreciate that, man. Well, speaking on that topic, because a lot of people, especially in my generation, the millennial generation, are living at home and not doing the things they need to do to become more independent and become the adults they need to be, and contributing to society. What advice would you give who are a few steps ahead of them, like you gave to me? What advice would you give to people if they were to watch this and to hear this right now?
You know, I am at the beginning of the millennial generation. So me and my friends, we consider ourselves the leaders of the millennials, but I deal with this every day. So one thing I would tell individuals today is this: stop allowing social media to mold you into who you think you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to have at a certain age. And you have to come up with your own belief system. Because here's the thing: if you just go online and believe everything everybody told you, or maybe some things your parents may have told you about their generation that worked for them, but now you're being raised in a technology generation that's not applicable, you have to have your own belief system first. Number two, you want to make sure that whatever vision that you have is your vision and it's not a vision that somebody else has embedded inside of you. Because I made this mistake. When I was coming up as a kid, everybody told me, oh, you're a good basketball player. You should be in the NBA. So what did I do? I started going down that path. And I found others who grew up in the hood like me that was basketball players, and I was trying to be in the NBA and live out their vision, and that led to me being depressed. That led to me being frustrated. And that's what's happening with a lot of people today is they look at social media and they're trying to mold their lives into some influencer thinking that, oh, if I'm not 25 years old with Lamborghini, I'm already a loser. My life is over. Somebody told me that the other day. Somebody told me that 25 years old said his life was over because he didn't have a Lamborghini. I'm like, who told you that? He's like, well, that's what I'm seeing online. I could go rent a Lamborghini right now and pretend I own that car. And if I did own a Lamborghini, guess what? That does not give me purpose. That does not give me significance. So one thing, the second thing I always say is find your own vision as an individual. And the third thing is you must commit to it. See, a lot of times because we grew up, you know, millennials and people younger than me, the thing is this: we grew up in kind of a technology and a microwave society. So we don't have this thing called delayed gratification. In order for you to succeed at anything in life, you have to go through the process, which is patience, and have the discipline to stay committed. One of the most wisest quotes I ever heard from somebody is that we should all be like a stamp on the envelope and stick to something until it delivers. But the problem with a lot of us, we start something, we don't have instant success, and in about 2 days or a month, we quit. If you want to succeed in anything in life, I don't care if it's writing a book, starting a business, whatever it is, you must commit to it. You must have your own belief system, what you believe about you, what you believe about the world. Number two, you must have your own vision. What is that vision for you? Because you can never be great at somebody else's vision for your life. And the third thing is you must have commitment to anything that you want to do in life, and that commitment must be wrapped with delayed gratification.
Gene, before we end this episode, I wanted to bring up this story because I shared it, I think, on one of the last podcast episodes I did. It was the night of the TEDx audition, and you were obviously in the audience for that as well. Um, was there anything that about that night that stood out to you? Obviously, hearing all these different speakers and stuff. I know it was so long ago, but for me, it was a huge moment for me because of how much preparation I did, and obviously the impact I made on at least one person. Is there anything that stood out to you that you can remember? And on top of that, is there anything that you go into any speaking engagement or in making any video that you constantly are like focusing on, not just the views or the money that you make, but is there something that always you're keeping inside of you that you value and you cherish that drives you to go to the next, to keep basically what you just said, staying patient with it and continuing to keep moving forward?
Yeah, and one thing I would say from the TED Talk, from when I speak or anything, and it goes back to a belief system, is I've learned over the years because in the hood you taught this is not this what I'm about to say is not powerful, and that is vulnerability is power. You see, one thing I noticed when you spoke, you going up there speaking about going through this car wreck, you having a hard time, with your brain situation, things like that. That made you powerful on the stage. And I remember when I used to see you up there, I'm like, wow, a lot of people wouldn't even go up there and even talk about this stuff. But you was able to do that on a consistent basis. Even in my own life, when I stopped memorizing speeches like an actor because I didn't want to let people see my imperfections or the way I grew up poor in the hood, and then I started being vulnerable about the way my daddy left, which is embarrassing. Your daddy tell you he's gonna be there, and then 2 weeks later he leave. That's embarrassing. That brings a lot of shame and guilt. But because I was willing to be vulnerable, it gave me power. But when I was growing up in the hood, I was taught that if you're vulnerable, you're weak, you're powerless. And all the speakers I've ever seen that were very successful are those who are willing to be vulnerable. And a lot of us, we put on this facade that we are perfect, we got everything together. But what we have to realize is that it's the things that we go through that's going to allow us to connect with others. And that's going to allow us to have the influence that we desire so we can have the change that we want to have in this world. So the one thing I would say is vulnerability is power. As long as we're vulnerable, we're willing to use our stories. It allows us to connect with others, and it'll help others to see that despite whatever it is you've been through in life, if you can use that story, that experience, then you can have an impact on others who are also trying to overcome that in their lives.
Gene, where can people find you or connect with you if they would like to reach out and maybe they have something that they've been dealing with or they just want to continue to be motivated, inspired by your words?
Well, you can find me on my YouTube page at Gene Mosley, which I've been building. On my Instagram page at Gene_Mosley. And I also have a TikTok at Gene_Mosley as well. You can always reach out to me there. And you can also go on Amazon or go to my website at wordtobegreat.com. I just came out with my new book, Word to Be Great. And that's how you can get in touch with me. And I would love to connect with any of you guys that may be struggling with your self-worth, that's trying to find that self-confidence so you can go after your dreams.
Guys, if you enjoyed this episode with Gene, please give it a huge thumbs up. I want to give a huge shout out to him as well for coming on again as well. The links that he just described will be in the description below. Please reach out to him and follow him. He's a great man and a great communicator, as you guys already have seen and heard. If you didn't check out the last podcast episode, please go check that out. The link will be in the description below. And until next time, I'll see you guys on the other side.